Hey. Good. Yourself? Good. Good. It is now it is now 7 o'clock, May 27th, 2021, and I call this meeting of the Bellevue Planning Commission to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would now ask for a roll call.
Mr. Casey?
Here.
Mr. Perrin?
Here.
Ms. Kane? Mr. Arney?
Present.
Mr. Ritz?
Here.
Mr. Ackley?
Here.
Mr. Hankins?
Here.
Ms. Cutsforth?
Present.
Mr. Jacobson?
Here. This meeting is conducted according to the Open Meetings Act, a copy of which can be located in the back portion of this chamber and on the West City's website. Additionally, I would like to remind all the audience and commissioners to turn off cell phones or put them on vibrate. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 22nd, 2021 regular meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the April 22nd, 2021 regular meeting.
Second. Motion by Cutsforth, second by Jacobson.
All voted yes, motion carried.
I would now entertain a motion to accept into record all staff reports, attachments, memos, and handouts regarding each application. Staff, has there been any updates since this was loaded online?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This afternoon, we did email out to the Planning Commission and did provide copies this evening. We did get an email from AJ Gutowski. He stated his opposition to agenda item 3A.
Thank you.
If the chair pleases, I'd like to make a motion to accept into record all the attachments, memos, handouts regarding each application, including the one that we received from AJ Gutowski.
Motion by Jacobson.
Second.
Second by Casey.
All voted yes, motion carried.
We have two items for public hearing tonight. I will read the item into record. Then I will open the floor up to an update from the staff. Then we'll open it up for public hearing for or against. I would remind anyone that wants to speak to please come up to the podium, make sure the little light on the microphone is on, state your name and address for the record, and sign in. If there's a large number of people that wish to speak for or against any items, I do reserve the right to limit each one's testimony. Again, it's always the golden rule. Treat others as you want them to treat you. First item tonight is item 3A, request for a conditional use permit for Lot 10, Nob Hill, for the purpose of caregiver services to independent seniors. Applicant Gloria Pettigrew Fletcher, general location 2008 Virginia Avenue, case number CUP-2102-02. Staff?
Thank you. As previously mentioned, we did receive an email this afternoon from AJ Gutowski. who resides at 2007 Virginia Avenue, stated opposition in regards to this application, cited concerns with traffic, it being a quiet residential area, and did not want a commercial, what was described as a commercial business in the neighborhood. Also, we did provide copies of those to the Planning Commission. A copy is also provided out on the front table for public. This application, Ms. Pettigrew Fletcher is requesting a conditional use permit to provide 24/7 care and assistance of daily living to independent seniors. And that is at 2008 Virginia Avenue. She is desiring to get a conditional use permit to have 3 to 4 patients at the location. It is a 3-bedroom home. The hours of operation would be 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, with the following shifts: a 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift, a 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift, an 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Ms. Pettigrew Fletcher has indicated there be 1 staff member per shift at all times, also a potential floater. There is also staff of a physical therapist, speech therapist, other professionals in order to provide care. There is up to 10 staff that would be supervised by Ms. Pettigrew Fletcher. Concerns that staff had were in regards to parking for this type of use. This neighborhood is homes predominantly built in the 1960s. Average size of home in the neighborhood is probably anywhere from 900 square feet to 1,200 square feet. Several of the homes have single car garages, single car driveways. Some people have expanded their driveways, but street parking is definitely utilized in the neighborhood. Parking is allowed on the south side of Virginia Avenue. Also in the neighborhood, each individual property owner has their own mailbox, so that further restricts parking as well. The applicant does have a driveway that Public Works and Planning believes would comfortably fit 4 vehicles. Of course, 2 of those vehicles would have to be blocked in order for 4 vehicles to fit. In looking at section 6.06 of the zoning ordinance, staff was just concerned about a 24/7 operation in this particular residential neighborhood, and concerned that the applicant would be able to meet section 6.06, particularly in regards to section 6.06.01, 6.06.02, and 6.06.05. Those sections deal with operation, the conditional use will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, moral comfort, or welfare of the community. Conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted. And also that adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress so as designed to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. Also should point out, Ms. Pettigrew Fletcher has taken the steps to be licensed, so she has that taken care of. For this type of occupancy, if approved, it would require a fire sprinkler. She is prepared to do that. She's waiting to make sure she gets approval from City Council before going through that expense. Also, the chief building official has indicated with the change of occupancy, she would have to make the home ADA compliant. So measures would have to be taken to meet that as well. With that, I can turn it over to Ms. Pettigrew Fletcher, and she can give you some more information, and then we can open it up for public hearing.
Step up to the front, yep. State your name and address for the record. You can take that off while you're at the...
Okay,
Yep.
awesome. Thank you. I
If
can
you wouldn't
breathe.
mind signing in too, so
Okay.
we have you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gloria Pettigrew Fletcher. My address is 3313 Joanne Avenue, Bellevue, Nebraska 68123. I know that there have been some concern in reference to parking and the activities as far as on the streets and things like that. I do have an extended driveway that actually was put in for a RV. So there is an additional 2 parking spaces also, right along with if there are going to be staff, we can transport one another, whether or not that would open up more room for parking so that there would not be a restriction as far as being able to get in and out of the facility. I feel that this is something that the community can definitely benefit from. I've been in touch with several other facilities that are looking for a place where they can place seniors who choose not to enter into a nursing home. They want to have that family setting. And that's one of the things that we do prepare and provide for them as far as activities, taking them to doctor's appointments, providing all the ADLs that they would need, just being able to give them a quality of life, a better quality of life. This has been a given purpose since my mom took sick, since who has passed last year, who was placed into a nursing home setting. And it was very difficult because she was out of state. And with me trying to provide care as the oldest sibling out of state, to be able to provide certain needs that she needed. Before that, she had had a stroke. And in that process, I took it upon myself to do what I needed to do to make sure that I would be able to provide the type of care that I provided for my mom and for the community at Bay. I feel I'm called to do this. It is my passion. I'm very passionate about what I do. I've been in business providing this type of service since 2011. I go into homes currently, and I also go into facilities. I work closely with PT, OT, and speech. The family setting, which is humongous and mean a lot to the clients that I take care of. Churches and other facilities have reached out looking for my services. And I think this would be an awesome opportunity to be a part of the community, to continue to build on the community, and to continue to help the community to grow with our seniors. This is my heart passion.
Thank you. If you want to sit down, I'll open up the committee to public hearing to see if there's anybody else that would like to speak for or against this matter on the record.
I'd like to say something.
Step on up.
Hi, my name is Sharon Tate, and I actually came here on another matter, but this has piqued my interest a little bit.
Could you state your address for the record also while you're signing in?
I'm at 3814 Gale Avenue.
Thank you.
From what I have heard, it sounds like it would be a great benefit to the community. I did have a question I probably missed. How many seniors you would be housing? 3. 3? Okay. Would there be medical practitioners there, doctors, nurses, or do you have that license?
I'm not trying to interrupt you because we're recording this also for
I need
going
to
online.
speak this way.
Speak this way, and then if you could kind of maybe list your questions, and then give her the opportunity to come back up so she can also speak into the microphone the answers.
Okay. All right. Well, the first question was whether, how many people would be there, and then if it would be staffed by medical practitioners. And I guess those were the majority of my questions. Like I said, I do think it would be a benefit to the community. and look forward to hearing your answers. Thank you.
You want to step up and address those? We got a pretty small crowd tonight, so we can kind of be a little bit flexible.
Thank you. Thank you. There will be a total of 3 clients that I would take care of within the home. And I do currently have nurses and PT, OT, speech, CNA, and med aids, and everyone is CPR qualified and state qualified also. You're welcome.
Like I said, I really think it sounds like a great possibility.
All right. Would you come on up?
Let me sign in here. My name is Gwendolyn Williams Jackson. My address is 12805 South 29th Street, Bellevue, Nebraska 68123. And I have known Gloria for over 20 years. We met at church, and her passion has always been caring for other people. And this has been a dream of hers for since as long as I've known her. She's had this dream of having a care facility for seniors. I've actually had the pleasure of working for her as an employee. This was a couple of years ago when my schedule would allow, but a great employer, cares about her employees, and has just been a blessing to me and the other employees that have worked for her. I know sounds like there's some concerns about the parking and the possibility that there would be people that need to park on the street. Because there is that extra that extra slab that the RV was from the previous owner, there is enough parking for her as the full-time employee, and if there are other people that need to come, there's enough room on the driveway to accommodate, I feel, anyone else that would need to come and provide services to the residents. So I don't foresee that being a problem. As far as it being a commercial enterprise, yes, that's true, but because they are seniors, it's not a typical, what you would think of as a typical commercial enterprise, where there's a lot of noise, back and forth traffic, things like that. It's going to be a little different. So I don't think there would be much of an impact on the neighborhood to have the facility there.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the record while the public hearing is still open? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and open it up to the commissioners. Commissioners, thoughts, questions?
I'd like to ask a clarification question, if you would step up. I see from the county records that you purchased this property in October of last year.
Correct.
And did you purchase it with the intent of this specific business?
Exactly.
Okay. And you mentioned your address is on Joanne.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. And then final question. So guests of the residents would be allowed to visit. Would there be a certain time they can visit? Anytime?
My goal is I want them to feel comfortable coming as they need, because there's times that if they're on hospice, your schedule changes. So you need to be able to be flexible. Of course, I would follow the CDC guidelines pertaining to COVID and things like that. And they, of course, would have to notify me to see if it's okay when they can come in and out. Being that there will be staff on duty 24/7 anyways, there would always be someone present to let them in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you another question? You gotta come up so they can hear you on TV, right?
I'm getting my crunches
I
in.
know. So how many staff are you required to have at one time for 3 to 4 residents?
Technically one.
One. Okay.
Per
So
6.
then like at a
clients.
shift change, you would have. I'm just trying to think of the number of cars you'd have at one time. So you'd have 2 cars, the person that's
cars.
working and the one that's coming on shift. So 2.
Exactly.
And if you had a handful of visitors there, you would be at your driveway would be full.
Technically, it would be, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Thank you.
But there's also the opportunity, because the close-knit relationship that we have with staff, and they live close in the area also, where they don't necessarily have to have a car, that we can also pick them up and bring them, interchange that way too. So that will leave room for anyone else coming as far as guests.
Thank you.
Oh, if you could remain at the podium, I don't want to keep you coming back and forth. I just had a quick question. Thank you. So, do you anticipate that the residents will also have their own vehicles there, or is it more they're in the situation where they're not as mobile?
Exactly. Yeah, they will not have transportation between the ages of 82, 83. The oldest client that I have right now is 97. So we do everything with them and for them, transportation to and from. So it would be no need for their own personal vehicle.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before I sit down?
I've got a couple questions for you. Would this facility fall under the jurisdiction of the DHHS?
It would be an assisted living, correct, through DHHS.
Have you got the facility reviewed, had them do the site walk to kind of take a look at it already?
Okay, there is a process. First to get the fire permit, and then from there I have to get certain things installed, the sprinkler system and the alarm system. I've already contracted a company that is going to take care of the sprinkler system, and due to COVID, things kind of got pushed aside. And I've already submitted all of my documents to the state, and they're just basically waiting on the fire permit. So once I get that, everything is to go.
Okay.
And I will say, planning department staff suggested that the applicant hold off on the sprinkler. I just wanted to make sure she was going to get her city council approval before she went to that expense. So yes, she's got it ready to go. That would just be something we would put in the conditional use permit agreement.
Yep. No, I was more wondering if after DHHS comes and does their walkthrough, if they're going to add another item on top of that. That's more. They usually have more stringent codes than City of Bellevue code would be, and so.
From my understanding, they submitted everything that I needed. I submitted it to the fire permit. I submitted it to also the sprinkler company, which is Titanic. And he's done this for other group homes, just as I have. And so he already know what the codes and the regulation, and he's going to make sure that we have everything properly set up for approval.
Okay. Then the ADA compliant that was kind of mentioned earlier is that going to be an easy achievement for you? Are you already ADA compliant there?
I would be already, yes. I already have my policies written out already for the state, and they do have a copy of that also. So I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Okay. I think my last question is would this be your first facility that you would be running? Okay.
Correct, yes. My first of several, that's my goal. 2 more facilities within the area.
Excellent.
Somewhat surrounding areas, I'll say that.
Thank you.
Thanks, too.
I applaud you for starting the process. My mom was at, Hillcrest for 6 years for Alzheimer's. And 6 years ago, my dad and I were looking for a facility like yours in the community. There's there's just nothing there. So I believe there's definitely a need.
Question for staff, I guess, is most of the concerns tied to the parking? Again, I know Virginia is a busier street. It's one of the few curb cuts for Fort Crook in terms of getting across. The car wash down next to Fort Crook, I know, backs up with traffic. You got Roma's next door, another busy place. So again, I know the west side of Virginia Street gets busy, and I assume this is more of a thoroughfare since the curb cut's on Fort Crook. If parking were addressed, I guess what are other concerns we're thinking about from a traffic and noise standpoint?
I guess parking would be the main concern. Again, just referencing Article 6. My concern would be that those items could be met, that we're not negatively impacting the neighbors. I went out to the neighborhood on a couple different occasions. I went out there on a Monday morning, probably around 9 a.m. There was a fair amount of people parked on the street at that point in time. The second time I went out was a Friday afternoon, early afternoon, same type of scenario. There was quite a bit of parking already on the street. So my concern is, okay, with the driveway that can, fit probably 4 cars, maybe 5, but you're going to have most of those cars blocked in. What does that look like for that neighborhood and for that area? Again, you've got the mailboxes. It is a fairly busy street because, yes, it's a thoroughfare for that Nob Hill neighborhood out to Fort Crook and out to that major arterial. So just want to make sure that we're not negatively impacting folks in that way.
Do we have other facilities like this in Bellevue area? I don't recall before having a conditional use come through for either the assisted living or for even group home and that, other than Sheltering Tree, and that was
Right.
more of a commercial building.
Right. You're correct, Mr. Ackley. I've been here almost 17 years. In that time, I haven't had a request like this. Yes, we've had similar facilities, but they've been in an RG20 type zoning because it's been a larger commercial type development, not in a residential area.
Mr. Casey, I think I saw your hand up earlier. Did he answer your question?
Mr. Ackley asked my question.
All right.
I have a question for staff. The assessor has 1 bathroom, which was talked about. If this zoning change goes through for 3 residents, is 1 ADA bathroom is all they need?
That would be a building code question. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. One additional question for you, if you could step up to the microphone so we can hear your answer. Looks like you want to make an additional statement, so that might be a
yes.
match. Did you want to address his comment
Yes.
first?
In reference to bathrooms, there's one on the floor, the top level, and then one on the bottom level. So there's actually 2 full bathrooms there, not just 1.
My question kind of centers around congestion again a little bit. In this type of care setting, you mentioned the driveway would probably be occupied by staff cars. Various
Possibly,
numbers
yeah.
as the day goes on. In terms of, you mentioned meal preparation, which is what caught my eye, is that there's going to be some sort of deliveries of materials to this facility to some extent. Typically those would be delivered by something other than a car. So if the driveway is reasonably full or partially full, I'm not too familiar with the industry. Does that require a light truck or sometimes a larger truck? And part of the reason I'm asking a little bit is that my experience has been some of the congestion that takes place in some of the commercial areas that have 3 lanes of turn lane in a defined commercial area. So think maybe by Walmart, perhaps over by Target in Bellevue. The commercial delivery to those restaurants is actually by a food service truck that's really truly a semi. And so once they park in the 3rd turn lane, for at least a little bit of time, congestion gets pretty tight. So I'm a little concerned on congestion here as materials are delivered to this location, if this were approved, that if it was a truck that wouldn't reasonably fit well into that driveway, how do you think that gets addressed, I guess?
Well, I would be responsible for picking up all the food, gathering, grocery shopping, planning the meals and things like that. So it would be no need for a commercial truck or anything like that. I do have a huge van that I would be transporting all meals and doing all the shopping, doctor's appointments and things like that. So it would be no need for a commercial van per se, because it is a small family setting. If you really have 3 residents, it's not a lot to really, be concerned about.
And the same would apply to hospital kind of oriented equipment as well, as there wouldn't be too much delivery of that sort of stuff then once you're set up.
Currently, I've been, I would say, blessed because I've been in this field for over 10 years. A lot of the medical beds have been personally donated to me. All of my medical supplies have been donated through different companies. So I have everything that I need. There's nothing that I need currently. Everything has been personally donated to me.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Cuthbert, did you have a question?
No, I just, to Ms. Palm's answer about a similar situation in the city, a group home or residential type of facility. I do recall one in my neighborhood several years ago where it was a single family home in a cul-de-sac off of Evergreen. That was a group home for a while. It's been several years since it was returned back to residents, but there was one and there were several cars that were parked in the driveway at times and a few on the cul-de-sac, but it wasn't anything more than that at that time.
I would say that didn't have city approval.
Okay, perhaps not. I don't know. But
I'm not saying they couldn't be out there. We haven't had one come through for official approval, but that's not to say they don't exist. But I don't recall one coming through in your neighborhood for that.
Okay, good to know.
Ms. Palm, I guess refresh our memory on a conditional use permit compared to a special. If there's complaints, if there's issues, obviously the city has the right to pull the permit. If we were to somehow figure out parking, which I don't know how we figure that out other than adding a cement pad to the front, which starts to take you out of the residential look of the neighborhood.
So with the conditional use permit, we would have a conditional use permit agreement. City of Bellevue no longer has special use permits in the zoning ordinance, so we don't use those anymore. But several years ago with the CUP, we did initiate the actual permit, the agreement. So there is, language in there that the city can regulate certain types of situations.
And my guess for the applicant is that from a business model standpoint, you probably need 3 or 4 to make the business model work, right? In other words, it doesn't work with just 1 or just 2 in terms of residents. Because you end up with the same amount of staffing, same amount of cars, I'm guessing, yeah.
Well, I know that there's a huge concern about parking. You're looking at seniors, 3 seniors, 1 staff. Seniors with no transportation. Family would be able to visit, of course, with appointments. I don't see how that will cause a lot of congestion in the area if we have 1 staff, 1 car, and 1 or 2 family visiting. That's three cars, possibly 3 cars. I don't see how that would cause, an issue there in reference to the parking. I do have the option to either take 1 client compared to my max 3 or 4 by state guidelines. that is an option there for me. But I see at most 3 cars in a driveway. 3.
I guess from a staff perspective, I don't have issue with 3 seniors, 1 staff. I don't necessarily have issue with that. My concern would be, you know, during the daytime, you likely have more staff because you will have, if you have a stroke patient, you know, you'll have OT, PT, speech therapy. So you'll have some of those other staff members that may be coming in. I don't know if you plan on having physician come in-house or you're going to transport residents to see a physician. Also, you know, Mr. Jacobson brings up a good point. Say you have somebody who has to start dialysis or has a special medical need, you know, you may have medical company coming in to drop off supplies, transport medical items, things like that. So again, I don't have issue with the 3 residents and 1 staff. I'm just worried that it parlays into more than that just by nature of the situation.
Yeah, with the possibility, that doesn't necessarily mean that will be an ongoing, constant situation.
Right.
It could be a one-off situation. So
it just takes one of those one-off situations for the city to get a call and, you know, complain about what's going on. So, you know, we just don't want it to be like a regular occurrence.
I understand.
Question for staff. At what point would somebody in a similar residential setting in a similar home have to come before the city for a conditional use permit if they wanted to have a child care facility?
Child care facility is a little bit different because that's a home-based business, so you'd have to live in the residence. You don't need a conditional use permit as long as you have 8 children or less in your care in your residence that you live in, no problem. If you want to have a family child care home too, which means you want to have up to 12 children, then you'd have to have a conditional use permit. But again, that's a little bit different because you must live inside that residence. If you don't live in the residence, then we consider it a commercial daycare facility, and then you need a commercial zoning.
So I was just trying to compare when we talk about the traffic issue with the number of vehicles. So if an 8 child facility, that could be 8 families coming and going throughout the day to pick up and drop off. Could be a similar, maybe even in some cases a worse situation. If that happened in this house on that street, it probably would even be at times even more congested. So.
Right.
If you want to step up and address that again, yes.
Strangely, you said that because this home was used for that purpose. She had a daycare in her home, the home on...
I'm sorry, you said it was used for that?
Mm-hmm. She took care of at least 5 or 6 kids in this home. This is why it's handicap accessible already, because she also had 1 child that was disabled, also that she took care of.
I guess question for Mr. Arney, actually. You're in the senior living business. Do you see this as a trend in terms of what we're going to see, more people doing neighborhood kind of facilities?
Let me think about how I answer this. There are very similar commercial facilities doing what she's trying to do that are in Sarpy County. There are truly commercially zoned facilities that have maybe more than 3, but less than 10 or 12. But yes, this is a very big thing, especially with COVID, because people that were in quote unquote facilities were not able to see their family over the last 18 months. And so this is a model that we're starting to see a lot of, but I'm not sure it's actually going to be in a residential setting or maybe a commercial building where you have 5 to 8, somewhere in that range.
Thank you.
I guess my thoughts on the parking, 2 things. One is I live across the street from an elementary school, and the drop-off lane is the sidewalk across the street from my house. So I'm very familiar with very bad congestion when elementary school students have to be dropped off. It's an annoyance, but I kind of have now modeled my day around it a little bit. So it is something that, like you were kind of indicating, it peaks and then it kind of goes down most of the day. The other thing is this is a 3-bedroom house. If this was to be purchased by a family with 2 kids who were driving, that would be 4 cars in today's day and age. We'd be at that 4 cars and then their friends come over. I think that there's definitely the issue that comes up is the potential for multiple cars continuously out there. If you need to have during the day, have a full-time PT, a full-time OT for somebody else, yourself, and then you got some family coming. If that becomes a habit, I think is what the city is looking at as the worst case, and making sure that we address this issue now rather than be preemptive instead of reactive. And I think that is a valid concern. And it sounds like that neighborhood already has quite a number of cars parking there. But considering the other uses of that building, of that house, I don't know if this would make it any worse or better than those uses, just for the fact that everybody has their own car anymore. And knowing that the residents would not have their own vehicle, that's my biggest concern, is that if you were to take in 3 residents who wanted to keep their vehicles, well, now you're already at max with just yourself and those 3 people. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Ackley and kind of reference him and say, is there something we can do to kind of increase their availability parking or something like that with this going forward? Does the city have any kind of power, if we were to grant this conditional use, to increase or to push them to increase the amount of parking if this became an issue? Or is this kind of, we give it to them and kind of hope it stays on the plan that it is now? If that makes sense.
I think that you probably have to be comfortable with what Ms. Fletcher is presenting. She is to have up to 3 to 4 residents, be 24 hours a day. We can't prevent somebody from parking on a public street. Her driveway is what it is. I think it's already maximized unless she's going to concrete her whole front yard. I don't think that's feasible. So I guess from my perspective, I think you just have to be comfortable with what she's telling you and be comfortable in believing that she can maintain the conditions that need to be met for Article 6.
Again, from a notice perspective, everybody within 300 feet would have received notice. We've received one letter. Again, the person across the street, and that person previously apparently lived with a daycare across the street. Do you remember if that was a licensed daycare at all?
I wouldn't know if it could have been a licensed, fire inspector would know if they visited it. We would only know from planning if it was a family child care home too. And to my knowledge, we didn't have a CUP on that address.
Back to Mr. Ritz's point, I guess from a conditional use permit standpoint, and again, we're not going to be able to track who's parking on the street, whose cars are they, but if there were more congestion, if the city were to go back and say, if we get X number of complaints, you have to add in an extra pad or something for another car, again, from a planning perspective and code perspective, it's not against the law to add another pad to the left. You see that all the time where people add extra parking in front of their residence. Again, it maybe gets you a little more in looking less like a neighborhood. But if we work some language like that into the conditional use permit, again, I don't know how the city determines whose cars are plugging up the street, and suddenly the applicant, unfortunately, is the one who has to provide one extra car spot of relief.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anything that would restrict on-street parking just because it's a public street. Mm-hmm. People can park there. That would be not enforceable in my mind. So
I'm just trying to think, if there's complaints, do we have a remedy in advance that says if we
Sure.
get X number of complaints because of parking, here's the remedy, or we pull the permit, which, to your point, it seems like you're gonna have 3 cars, one's gonna get blocked in when somebody's visiting, you guys will figure out the shuffle. Your worst day is gonna be when the ambulance shows up or medical emergency, and that's gonna be no different than any other house in the neighborhood, with the exception of you might have that occurrence more often than the average home, but
Well, Mr. Ackley's on that point. This is the house, correct? And it already has a partial pad in addition to the primary driveway. What are your thoughts about just extending that pad on down, allowing at least, I would say, one more parking spot?
Okay, if I had to do that, that's what I would do. Whatever it takes, because as I stated earlier, this is my passion. This is, I think, is a huge benefit to the community, and that's what I want to do, is be a part of the community and help the community. That's my thoughts.
Mr. Casey, is that picture from Google Maps? That's from, I think if I remember when I looked at it, it said 2011. And it doesn't match up quite with the same aerial that that's shown now. If we could put the aerial that was,
with the camper on it.
see how on the aerial it looks like she did both spots go all the way to the street, and in the 2011 picture you only have the single lane that goes to the street, if I remember correctly. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
It doesn't even look like the same house.
That's not the right house.
The one with the camper?
Yep.
Or-
Yeah.
You've got 2 full drive lanes
Oh,
in
it
and out.
already is 2 full drives.
Yeah. I had the same questions when I originally looked this up, and then Google Maps failed me for once. So
Yeah, mine says 2021, but
it says 2021, but then if we look in another part of it, it says 2011. It's weird.
okay, I retract everything I previously said.
I guess my question is a clarification. On your application, you said that you will have a staff of 10. Now, are you going to have a staff, or are you going to be subcontracting out these the specialties? And that's, legalese, but
Yeah, they're 1099 contractors who works for me currently.
okay. So you'd have a staff of
10. It's still 10 of contractors. They've been with me from the beginning.
When I use the word staff, I mean like W-2 employees. So it'd be yourself and 1099 contractors only.
Correct.
Okay. That makes a big difference to me, because when I see a staff of 10, I'm thinking a PT 40 hours a week person that's there when I read that. So that's why I'm clarifying.
Right. And normally when I schedule PT, it's usually around hours, certain hours, because you don't want them there at the same time. So one will come, other will leave, because that's currently what I do now with the clients that are in their homes and in facilities too already.
Yep.
So they're usually not 3 there or 4 there at the same time. It's in and out.
Thank you.
I guess question for staff, just looking through the conditional use permit, I guess 3I talks about signage on the property conforming. Do we allow signage with, again, it's more of a business use in a residential neighborhood? No signage, or what's our signage like for something like that?
No signage is allowed. You can have an unlighted sign. You can also have temporary signs. Typically, if this were a home-based business, we would say you couldn't connect the address with any advertising. But this is a little bit different because it's not technically a home-based business.
So, Ms. Palm, if we were to have a rare moment where we go against your recommendation, are there things in the conditional use permit that you think we would need to address, again, to give the city some ability to reconsider the issuance of the conditional use permit? In other words, what would be the trigger points that, again, from a parking standpoint, it's gonna be impossible to say,
Right. To answer your
parking.
question, no, we already put everything in the conditional use permit that we wanted to see. So in regards to, yes, we use the term staff because she does have up to 10 people that are either working there or she contracts with that can be there. We indicated no more than 3 to 4 senior residences because that's what she had in her application. If you're saying 3, we can change that to 3. We also have the approved hours, 24 hours, 7 days a week, with staff on site. Other than that, it's, I guess in my mind, I wouldn't change anything because like I said, I think the only thing you could do would be to restrict on-street parking, and I don't want to do that in this situation.
Interesting issue. I mean, it seems like a good home-based business, Mr. Casey. When you talk about comparing it to a daycare, you're going to have so much less traffic with the coming and going at certain hours in the morning and leaving in the evening. On the other hand, Ms. Palm, I appreciate the concerns for traffic. Virginia is a little more busy street because, again, Fort Crook has the curb cut there, and the business is on the what would be the west side of Virginia Street here, the east side of Fort Crook between the car wash and Roma's. They get a ton of cars that block that lane a bit, but that has nothing to do, I guess, with the cars going past this particular house. What are other people thinking?
Agreed.
I guess staff, would it be logistically, would it be of any benefit to add a line that she would limit the number of staff at any given time to no more than 4 or something?
You know, we talked about that as staff. I guess I'm hesitant to do that though too, because how am I to sit here and determine what the needs of her residents are going to be? You know, typically, yeah, you're probably not going to have more than a couple staff, but say there's a medical emergency, say you have 3 people that have high care needs. I really don't want to put that limitation on her. I think that would be unfair, and I think it'd be difficult to enforce in the long run.
Okay. Appreciate the response. Commissioners, further questions, thoughts? Anyone want to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion to approve a conditional use permit for Lot 10, Nob Hill, for the purpose of caregiver services to independent seniors.
Second.
If I might, Mr. Hankins, with that motion, can you give us the reason for the approval for the record so that we have it?
Like my opinion, this is a need for the community, and I do not feel that there is a issue with parking. Like all agenda items, I visited the property, and I think the driveway is adequately.
So you believe that the conditions of Article 6 can be met?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just, for the record, we need to lay that out.
Just put it, all right. So there was a motion by Hankins, second by Cutsforth, and it's the motion plus the can meet the conditions of Article 6, to be clear before we vote, so.
Six voted yes. Mr. Arney and Mr. Jacobson voted no. Motion carried.
This item will go before the City Council for public hearing, June 15th. Next item on the agenda is item 3B, request to rezone lot 1, 370 square replat 6, being a replat of lots 1 and 2, 370 square replat 4 or IV from BG to RG-8-PS for the purpose of multifamily residential development with site plan approval and small subdivision plat lot 1, 370 square replat 6, being a replat of lots 1 and 2, 370 square replat IV. Applicant Sage Capital LLC, general location 36th Street and Lexington Avenue. Case numbers Z-2104-03 and S-2104-07. Staff, could you give us a update on this item?
Sure. This applicant is in regards to two current existing vacant lots near the intersection of 36th Street and Lexington Avenue. To the north is primarily commercial, and it is surrounded by multifamily residential and townhomes to the south. This application is to replat the property into one lot and change the zoning from commercial zoning to a multifamily residential zoning with site plan, which will facilitate the two buildings on one lot. In those two buildings, there are 51 units proposed. Parking requirements, landscaping requirements have all been met. Public Works Department has reviewed the drainage plan, has requested additional information just to make sure that this developer is able to comply with everything. Public Works is comfortable with the proposed drainage and everything that is being shown. The one thing that planning staff is requesting with the current 36th Street widening project, and Angela, if you could show that up on GIS. She's getting there. With the current 36th Street widening project, a 10-foot wide trail is planned, and that's going to be all the way from the Gale Blind intersection to the south of this area, all the way down to Sheridan. When this application came in, staff looked at it and thought, okay, it would make sense along 36th Street to put in a 10-foot wide trail and kind of extend that planned connection up to Lexington. That would facilitate residents being able to easier get to the Marv Holibar. You've got a nice area that has existing sidewalks and has some good connection already. You can see where Angela's cursor is. There's an existing multifamily development to the south that does not have a sidewalk. So with this application, you'll notice the site plan doesn't show a sidewalk on 36th Street. That's by design. City would like to hold off on that for a moment. We'd like to take some time to plan that trail extension and eventually have that 10-foot wide trail. At such time that the city would be ready to go, we would then ask the developer to cost share with us, since they'd be responsible for a 5-foot sidewalk anyway, and then we would facilitate that. So I just wanted to point out that's why you don't see a sidewalk shown on the site plan, but the plan would be that we would have a trail there in the very near future. Other than that, this area is shown as an activity center in the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. By definition, activity center is kind of a mixed use area where people can live, work, play. It's a mix of commercial, residential. This multifamily development would fall in line with those definitions of that activity center. For all those reasons, staff is recommending approval of this application.
By the way, for the first applicant, if you want to go, you're free to go. You're welcome to stay. You're
Yes,
welcome to
thank
stay,
you.
but we won't be offended if you leave.
Trying to get your attention.
Thanks for everything.
Is the applicant for 3B present? And
Have a good evening.
if you want to maybe step up if there's anything to say on this application.
Hi, I'm Brian Ackert, 119 South 49th Avenue. Yeah, we've taken a look at the site a little bit, and currently there are 2 lots on site. I am the architect for these two building structures here for multifamily housing. One of the interesting things here is just kind of digging back from a site history standpoint. It hasn't really been developed in the past, and when we're starting to uncover as far as why, there are quite a few different easements that are running across the site when it was previously platted in a different configuration that we even see today. Even originally too, Lexington Avenue didn't necessarily connect all the way to 36th Street. There was kind of a little cul-de-sac that was located there. So if you even go back in history, it's kind of interesting to see how time has gone on. But ultimately, what we'd like to do is connect a drive, maybe a little bit further back. There we go. There, perfect. Yep. So it was divided up a little bit differently, and there's some different easements that we're working through, and some different buried utilities in some of those, and currently working through some of those items. But as you can see, Lexington Avenue never used to connect over to 36th Street either. So where our curb cut would be located in present day's map is directly right in the middle of the site. So it lines up with the curb or the road across the way. And then we'd have two multifamily structures at approximately 25 units each. One's 25 units, one's 26 units, because we do have some amenities in one of them that are pushed up against Lexington Avenue, and then the other one's pushed up against 36th Street. All the parking's really pushed kind of back behind, so we're trying to screen that from view from the Lexington Avenue area. And then also the landscaping and vegetation, as well as some different detention basins, are kind of located on two different low points on that site as well. So, I'm here for any questions, but we're looking forward to answering any questions you have.
Thank you. Now open this up for a public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to speak for or against this matter for the record?
That would be me.
And you don't need to sign in again, but if you can state your...
I did want to hear other opinions. Apparently, I'm the only one from my community that decided to show up, but you may have letters from others. My biggest concern is the traffic there at 36th Street and Lexington, and also right there at that, I think it's a Pizza Hut, and then there's a gas station right there as well. Those and 36th Street and Cornhuskers, 370 is a nightmare anyway. There's accidents there at that corner all the time. And I know we've got some new construction as far as traffic there on 36th Street, that new project that you're working on. Are there any plans for increasing the traffic signals there, or how is that going to interact with the proposal that we have here?
I can speak to that. So, Angela, if you can pan out just a little bit and show. So currently there's a signal at the Gale and Blind intersection. Then you've got signal at 370.
Right.
Signal hasn't been discussed a whole lot at Lexington just because of spacing, because of the current access the way it is, the access you described over by Dunkin' Donuts, that strip retail where Pizza Hut is, and then Lexington. It'd be really hard to facilitate a signal in that area. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've often driven that intersection peak hours. I think peak hours is when you have the most problems, your AM and PM.
And weekends.
Right. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I feel comfortable in speaking about traffic engineers will tell you that 51 multifamily units will generate a lot less traffic than a potential commercial development. Probably even a multifamily development larger than this isn't going to have, from a traffic engineer's perspective, a large negative impact on what's going on there now. With a multifamily versus a commercial, you're probably going to see that traffic spread out a little bit more, and you're going to see less of it throughout the day than you would if these were to develop commercially as currently zoned. So is the traffic going to get any better there? No, probably not. Is it going to be exponentially worse? We don't believe so from an engineering perspective. Over time, as the 36th Street improvements get made, obviously phase one's under construction now. We hope that improves even further. This is an area that we will keep an eye on, see what we can do, see what we can make better. Unfortunately, there's certain situations where those access points have been set. Previously, there was the access that comes across Comstock that was previously cut off. Then we had the Lexington one put in just to kind of stagger those a little bit.
Okay.
Because we used to, not that we still don't have some stacking at AM and PM time, but it used to be much worse when you had those two entrances that close to 370. So, like I said, hopefully with the 36 project, we'll see some better traffic flow, and this is an area we'll continue to keep an eye on, but no plans for a signal at this point, and this particular development wouldn't trigger that just from a traffic perspective.
So even given multiple cars for each unit there, are you still just saying 1 car per unit, or how is that getting?
Not necessarily. With 51 units, there are certain guidelines that are looked at as far as how much traffic that's going to generate, how many trips per day. Typically what we look at is that you're going to probably have at least 2 cars per unit is what we figure. And let me look. I'm trying to recall the breakdown of 1 bedroom. Do you guys have any 2 bedrooms, or is it all?
64 one bedroom,
Okay.
looks like, and 38 two bedroom.
Okay. So you do have a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms. Not to say with a 1 bedroom, you still can't have a couple there with 2 cars, but typically we look at about an average of 2 cars per unit is what we look at.
Okay. Well, it's still a scary proposition for me. I've lived there for 10 years, and I haven't seen it get any better. The mornings, of course, during commute hours, it stacks up pretty good there. Actually, I don't even go that route. I turn and go towards 48th Street.
Sure.
Because it is a nightmare. And if you're just trying to make a quick run to Baker's, it's really you've got your head on the swivel.
Sure.
And it takes quite a bit of time in order to
Right. And the other option, and I can see if I lived in this neighborhood, I would do it. I would probably go down to that Blind Gale intersection where it's signalized. That way,
and I do that, but
Yep.
that light doesn't change it takes a long time for that light to change.
Maybe that's a conversation with the Public Works Department, so I can have that conversation.
Yeah, because it takes a
they can
long
check-
time. I've actually backed up, turned around, and went the other way, waiting for it to change.
We can have them check the timing on that to make sure it's not off. But
Because sometimes, you think you edge up a little bit and it'll trigger.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't trigger. Yeah.
So noted. Like I said, I can have that conversation with them to see if they've checked the timing on that recently.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm all for progress. I'm, not here to stifle that, but I do think that there's a need for something to be addressed when it comes to those traffic signals. Definitely.
Sure.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We are still in the public hearing. Seeing no one else to speak in the public, I will close the public hearing and open it up to commissioners. Commissioners, thoughts, wishes?
I guess refresh my memory. Tammy, when the 36th Street improvements are done, they're just bringing the 3-lane up to Gale, right? There's really no improvements are going to be made between Gale and 370 because those are already 2 lanes each.
Yeah, so it'll be 4-lane. It'll be 4-lane all the way down to Sheridan is the first phase. And then Sheridan to Platteview Road is phase 2.
Yeah.
So the whole section will be 4-lane.
Yeah, from a traffic light standpoint, I don't think they'd be allowed to add any along in there just because the stacking is so short for the amount of traffic. So again, whether the city can change or add lanes in that between 370 and Gale, I don't know, but that's separate and apart from this application.
And even with Lexington, it would. You would have to So even at Lexington, would there be any room for making that type of modification?
My gut tells me no, just because it's so short. It'd be pretty rare to go through town and see where there's 3 lights that close together.
2 lights?
Well, but you got 370 and then you got, I guess, Gale down below, and we'd be adding one in the middle.
And Tom's correct, because like I said, you've got the Comstock entrance up there just immediately to the south. Then you have Lexington, and then you have the Gale and Blind intersection. So unfortunately, I agree that I don't think we'd have the spacing to signalize Lexington. Not to say that there couldn't be some different solution in the future. I just don't know if it'll be in the form of a signal.
Okay.
I wish we could fix that problem, but that one we can't fix for you, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I guess my thought on that is I'm assuming that probably has about 20, 30,000 cars per day go up and down that 36th Street corridor. Maybe not that many, but an extra 100, 200 is not going to be noticed. It sounds like a lot when you say the number, but if you count how many cars actually go past you every day, I did that one time, and after about 1,000, I just gave up. My 5-year-old kept going, but
click, click. I can definitely see it, from a city zoning and planning perspective. I do understand that, and I guess maybe this just happened to be the forum that I decided that I needed to voice that there's a problem there at those 3 intersections. Yeah.
No, and we appreciate the voice because you live there, so you know it better than we do. So
yeah, and like I said, it's various times that it's worse than others, but I would say over the last 3 years, it hasn't degraded. It hasn't gotten better. Yeah.
So,
Mr. Chair, if I might, if any of the commissioners have any other comments, I'd like to make one comment and then make a motion if none of the other commissioners have one.
Mr. Jacobson?
If I might address your traffic issue a little bit, I'm very familiar with that area. I've lived around that area my entire life.
Okay.
My father was injured at Comstock in a car accident there because of the traffic, so I'm very familiar with your frustrations at that
and
location.
There is a memorial. I'm not sure. I'm imagining there at 36 and Gale that maybe a child was probably killed because someone is tending that memorial, and it's there, right there at that corner.
Yeah, my opinion, and I'm in favor of what we're proposing here in the surrounding area, is that we have the Marv Hoball Trail now that's complete, and there's other options, including the light at Gale. And I really think what will happen is, and I'm not a traffic engineer by any means, but I'm familiar with that area, is that area kind of necks down from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes right now. And so traffic kind of stacks up at rush hour. And my hope is once we get to 4 lanes and we get all of the project done, the traffic will actually flow faster. And I am hoping that we'll actually have more turn time out of your street as well as Gale. But there is a safety valve just to go the extra half a mile around the corner to Gale Street and take the light, and maybe the traffic.
Like I said, I don't even go that way. Most of the time I swing back around on Moss Road.
Sure.
And then hit 48th Street.
And I've done that sort of thing as well. And if I'm on the east side of 36th Street, I have a tendency to slowly go through the neighborhood and avoid the crossing of that traffic as well. But I think once the modifications are done, it would be a good opportunity to neck down. Traffic will really flow through there better at the speed limits, and maybe that'll open that up as well.
Okay.
And so to the other commissioners, having said that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommend the request to rezone lots 1 through lot 1, 370, replat 6, lots 1 and 2, 370, replat 4, for the purpose of a multifamily residential with site plan approval and small subdivision plat at 370 square for 1 and 2, based on the apparent lack of public impact to this development and the positive to the area as well.
Motion by Jacobson.
I'll second, but I did have a couple questions. Can I ask those still?
I think that after we do questions, we need to redo a motion then, if I remember correctly.
After a second, we can have discussion.
Okay,
Yep,
so
that can be discussion.
Okay.
I'll make a second, yeah.
All right,
Unless you want to
second by
repeat
Arnie.
it again, Leland, you can say it again. No. Just to help maybe ease her mind a little bit, will Public Works require a traffic study as part of this, typically as part of the submittal of this, so that we have something to actually show the residents that, hey, they've done the study and these 102 cars or whatever are not going to impact the area?
Yes. So typically when we go through the pre-application process, if Public Works wants to request a traffic study, that is done. So that's looked at. That's why I say typically in these situations, even though, yes, the 51 units is going to make an impact, it's going to have less of an impact than if it were to develop as the existing commercial conditions would allow.
So that's something she could get a copy of at some point throughout the process?
And I don't believe that Public Works required a traffic study at this particular location, just because of the number of units in the location. So,
Okay. Maybe that's something that council could consider
yes.
to get if that's something that residents would like to see. So, okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. If no other discussion, I think we vote.
Did Arnie make the second?
Yes.
Did you second it? Okay. All voted yes, motion carried.
This item will go in front of the city council July 6th.
And thank you, Mrs. Tate. I will talk to Public Works about the timing on the traffic light at 36th and Gale.
All right, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. There is no current business, staff, so then I would see if there's be a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Cutsforth,
Second.
second by Perrin.
I'll give you a verbal aye. I already started shutting down.
All voted yes, motion carried.
Thank you, everybody. I didn't put this on the agenda, but just one things I wanted to say is Bellevue's gonna get its first D-cycle station out of the Culver